Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Niall and Donnghaile.
Well, las Carly August the Falcha Rivanira Tassunga was a chumata O'Hugh and Kestna Shaw. I want to just, Minister, preface my remarks this afternoon because I think it's important. It's not the intention of anyone, either in this House or indeed the proposers of the motion, but I think it's important just to remember and to reiterate the fact that when we talk about communities and we talk about communities under a heading like this, we need to remember that they are communities. That there are people living there, that there are people suffering there, that there are people enduring there, and we need to be careful that we don't blanket them all or paint them all in a particular way. It's precisely because they are good communities and good people, strong communities, that they need this kind of investment in terms of community safety, and that these criminals think that they can prey upon them. So, sometimes we throw out terms like, border communities and lawlessness, and I'm not doubting any of the severe issues we have to challenge, but I would just always encourage and reiterate the point that at the heart of these communities and these stories, and indeed these debates in the House, there are people, and it's important that we remember that.
Fully. Thank you.
Minister, Sinn Féin has been consistently clear and firm on the issue of the Garda and the PSNI being adequately resourced to deal robustly with the threat posed to people all over the country by organised criminals and opportunist criminals. We live in the communities most affected by these criminal gangs, and we see at first hand the impact of their activities on people going about their ordinary everyday lives, trying to provide a safe and secure life for their children, for their families, for themselves. These people, wherever they prey on our communities, are a scourge on society, especially in those areas experiencing already high levels of deprivation. They operate through a reign of fear and intimidation. The two proposals before us today, the motion from Fianna Fáil and the amendment from Fine Gael, both reflect the gravity of the threat posed by criminals and the measures in place to face that threat. I think it would not have been too difficult for both parties to have agreed a motion which all of us in the Seanad could then fall behind. The result of that would have been a united Seanad, sending out a united message to the people we represent that the police, the Garda, will not tolerate the activities of these gangs. And such a united message would have helped the confidence of the people to believe that politicians are fully behind them as they encounter these gangs on their streets, in their towns, in their villages. In the absence of such a motion, Sinn Féin will be supporting the original Fianna Fáil motion. Sinn Féin supported the establishment of a joint agency task force under the Fresh Start agreement. This agreement involved, as you know, Minister, because if I'm right in saying you were there, the Irish Government and the Executive and the main parties in the North. The purpose behind the task force was to target organised criminals north and south. It was led by senior officers from the Garda Síochána, the PSNI, the Revenue Commissioners here and the Revenue and Customs in the North. The task force incorporated a strategic oversight group to identify strategic priorities and an operations coordination group to organise and oversee joint policing operations against criminals and to direct resources in that context. The questions I have, Minister, in terms of today is, are you content that that task force has worked? Has it delivered in the context of the challenges, particularly amongst border communities, that communities are facing? And that's not to ask that in an adversarial way. It's to ask you to give us a considered view on that, and if there's anything that we can do in this Seanad, and indeed those of us who sit on the Justice Committee, to look at that and to try and to assist in enabling that in a way that delivers greater community safety and protection for those communities most impacted upon. Because it's my view that in the current context that has been outlined very ably by Senator Gallagher and Senator Conway, that if you were to go and ask those communities, is it making a practical, tangible difference to them at this point in time? It's probably not, but it can and it should, and that's where we need to be getting to in the course of our work. So what lessons can be learnt from its operation in terms of tackling the gangs more effectively? We need more officers recruited into both the Garda and indeed the PSNI, but we also need to be assured that the additional personnel will be put to good use to combat effectively the criminals, not the police checkpoints along the border. Additional resources will be needed to complement the intelligence gathering and investigative capacity of both organisations, Minister. And we have raised any number of times the closure of Garda stations, especially in rural areas. So there is a slight irony in lamenting the absence of Garda resources in rural areas from the very same people who are responsible for closing so many of those stations. But we are where we are. Sinn Féin are strong advocates of community and neighbourhood policing teams and the promotion of a strong and genuine policing with a community ethos and practice and a human rights compliancy at its heart. This involves a genuine partnership between the community, the key agencies and the police themselves. For it to be effective, it requires a joint identification of policing priorities aligned to joint problem solving in an attempt to effectively deal with these matters at a grassroots community level. In the context of rural crime and community policing, I would commend our recent report. I think Martin's the only other one from the Justice Committee here, but we carried out quite a comprehensive series of hearings into community policing and rural crime.
An excellent report.
It is an excellent report, and I would commend it to members, and I'm sure the Minister is familiar with it. But in many ways, let it, in some ways we've already done that work. So let it be a guide and let it be a tool for the Garda and for the Department of Justice in terms of policing rural areas more effectively and listening to the needs of people on the ground. So, Minister, I also want to touch on a lot of colleagues have raised the scourge of drugs and armed gangs and the armed response unit from the Garda. Probably one of the most common experiences of criminal activity, and this has been raised by my colleague Deputy Ferris in the other House, is the issue of illegal money lending and threats to people as a result. When we talk about vulnerable communities being victims of these criminals, it is again, as I said earlier, precisely that vulnerability that they're preying on. So it is people lending mothers in many cases. It is women who are heading families who are preyed on by these people. Lending them money and then demanding absolutely extortionate rates back, threatening them with violence and intimidation, and in some cases carrying that violence through. So I think it's just another issue that it'll relate to a lot of people out there, and it's maybe one, Minister, while we have you in the House, that you can address. The Garda and the PSNI must appreciate the central role that the community can play in helping to tackle criminality. But this will only happen if the communities feel confident and empowered to assist the police in every way. And this very much depends on the police investing resources and personnel into well-organised and planned community-based policing. It also means investing in the community-led safety initiatives that come from the grassroots themselves, like neighbourhood watch schemes, like text alert programmes, and also, crucially, in our urban centres, but increasingly in rural areas, restorative justice projects as well. Progress in defeating armed criminal gangs is slow, but nonetheless I do concede some progress is being made. And evidence is crucial in this operation, evidence from the public. So in this context we need to look at possible measures to protect witnesses as one method of ensuring these gangs are imprisoned and taken off the streets. A united front of politicians, police and community is one sure way of eradicating the scourge of criminality and restoring peace to the streets and peace of mind for the community who are being targeted. And in concluding, Marachal Skur, Ira, I just want to assure the Leader of the House that had the amendment came in the form of a motion, stand alone, I'm sure it would have gained our full support. We had to make a call on this. I believe in the context of what we're facing and the expectation from the community out there, the original Fianna Fáil motion holds the greater weight. And that's why we are supporting both. I would have loved to have been able, or supporting that, I would have loved to have been able to support too. But
Thank you, Senator. I now call